Hey guys, tonight we slip into sandals that don't quite fit, tug at a tunic that's already damp with morning sweat, and find ourselves staring down a long stretch of wilderness where a road will someday run straight as an arrow. You're here, a Roman road builder, though I've got to warn you right at the start. You probably won't survive this job. The hours are brutal, the tools are primitive, and the blisters on your hands will look like they're plotting a rebellion of their own. Still, there's something oddly soothing about imagining the thud of picks, the scrape of shovels, and the rhythmic chant of orders barked in Latin. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it where you are? Drop it in the comments. I get a kick out of picturing all of us sprawled in different time zones, connected by one sleepy story. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The morning air smells like wet clay, sharp and metallic, and you're already aware of the weight of the day pressing down. The Roman foreman shouts, and your spine stiffens like a bowstring. You trudge forward, dragging tools behind you. No breakfast feast, just a hunk of bread and a swig of sour wine-water mixture called pasca. You try not to grimace. This stuff was originally Soldier's Gatorade, but tonight it just tastes like vinegar on a dare. The line where the road should go has been marked, though it's not obvious to your sleepy eyes. Romans insisted their highways be unervingly straight, like someone unrolled a divine ruler across the land. The tool they used? A groma, for arms jutting out from a vertical staff, each dangling weighted plumb lines. The thing looks like a very unhappy mobile for a baby with geometry anxiety. You squint at it, trying to line up the threads with the horizon, and realize this is how the empire grows. String by string, stone by stone. It's a grand thought, but your stomach growls and yanks you back down to earth. The pickaxe is heavy. You drive it into the soil, feeling the ground shudder. Every strike makes your shoulders ache, and you haven't even finished the first hour. You mutter a curse in your own tongue, whatever province you're from, but the centurion glares and suddenly your accent feels like contraband. A fact worth remembering. Roman roads were layered, built in careful strata like a cake without the frosting. First came the foundation trench, filled with rubble. Above that, smaller stones, then gravel, then tightly fitted paving slabs on top. You will spend weeks stomping and tamping each layer, making sure the camber, the slight curve of the surface, lets rainwater slide off like soup down a tilted bowl. That detail kept the roads usable for centuries, which is impressive when you realize modern potholes sometimes barely last until next winter. But not everything about this job is admirable. In one corner of the worksite, you overhear a hushed conversation about spirits trapped in the soil. Some workers, Gauls maybe or Iberians, believe that every stone you dig free howls in the underworld, begging to be left alone. They mutter charms, tie scraps of cloth to nearby trees, and pour out a little drink before lifting the next rock. Superstition slows the pace, but nobody dares laugh too loudly. Who wants a vengeful quarry ghost rattling around your dreams? Still, there's debate even in our own time about why these roads were built with such intensity. Historians still argue whether the main point was military, quickly moving legions to crush a revolt before it grew, or commercial, feeding markets with goods from every corner of the empire. For you, sweaty and blistered, the purpose doesn't matter. What matters is that the sun is already high, the stones are unyielding, and your back feels like someone replaced it with a plank. A break comes at midday, though break is generous. You sit on a rock, rubbing grit from your eyes, while flies buzz around the salted pork ration. It's chewy enough to qualify as dental training, and one of the men jokes that it's probably last year's war horse. Everyone chuckles, not because it's funny, but because laughing makes chewing easier. You wash it down with more pasca, which somehow tastes worse after warming in the sun. The road begins to snake forward, or rather, refuse to snake. It cuts across fields, swamps, even hills, with an arrogance only empires can afford. Trees are felled without hesitation. Villagers grumble as farmland gets sliced apart. A child cries because the path to their grazing meadow now looks like a scar across the earth. You glance up at the centurion, wondering if he notices, but his face is carved from the same stone you're laying. As the afternoon drags, your mind drifts. The rhythm of lifting and dropping, scraping and shoving, becomes hypnotic. You almost forget your own body until the handle slips and a callous tears open, stinging with sweat. Someone beside you mutters a crude joke about bleeding on Rome's behalf, and you chuckle even through the pain. Gallows humor, ancient style. By dusk, your arms dangle like ropes. The foreman finally calls halt. You stagger to the camp, just canvas tents and smoky fires, where men slump like toppled statues. A fiddler scrapes out a tune on some battered instrument, and for a moment, spirits lift. There's comfort in the fact that misery shared becomes almost bearable. Almost. You stretch out on straw, the stars blinking above. The road you started today is only a faint scar in the dirt, but you know it will grow. Tomorrow, more digging, more stones, more sweat. Someday this line will carry legions, merchants, messages, even gossip faster than the world has ever seen. But for now, it just carries your aching bones into uneasy sleep. The sun hasn't even cracked the horizon, and already the camp stirs. You blink awake, straw poking your cheek, and the ache in your arms feels like you slept hugging a sack of rocks, which, considering yesterday's work, isn't far from the truth. The call goes out, guttural Latin mixing with curses in half a dozen provincial accents, and you rise because not rising means a soldier's boot nudging your ribs. Breakfast, don't get your hopes up. Another lump of bread, another splash of pasca, the Empire's favorite sour punch. You chew slowly, imagining grapes that never existed in this concoction, and try to ignore the flies that seem to think your rations are a public bathhouse. A few of the men argue whether it's worse to eat dry bread alone or bread dipped in that vinegar water. You decide either way it's just edible sadness. Then it's time to march to the line where the new road will cut through the landscape. Today isn't just brute labor, it's about surveying. You stand at the edge of a plain where mist still clings to the grass, and you squint to imagine the future. Somewhere across this field, a ruler-straight line will soon emerge, stretching toward a horizon you can barely see. The Roman engineers, called agrimensors, step forward with their tools. Chief among them, the groma. Picture a tall staff, balanced on a base, with 4 horizontal arms forming a cross. From each arm dangle weighted plumb lines, swinging lightly in the breeze. The surveyor peers along the threads, aligning them with distant markers, then directs you to clear a path exactly along that axis. To your eyes, it looks like sorcery, but to them, it's geometry incarnate. Here's the mainstream fact. Roman roads were famous for their uncanny straightness. Unlike the meandering paths of earlier peoples, Rome's highways often plowed directly across hills and valleys. The logic was military speed. No delays, no wandering. If the land got in the way, well, the land would have to change. But while the engineers bark precise instructions, you notice some of the older workers muttering little prayers before each sighting. One swears he saw a raven land exactly on the proposed line yesterday, and now he's convinced the gods favor this route. Another scoffs and spits, saying birds mean nothing but droppings on your helmet. And yet, later, someone swears a haruspex once read omens in sheep entrails to bless a road path. Fringe or not, it reminds you how superstition drips into even the straightest lines of Roman planning. You trudge along the markers, planting stakes and dragging brush aside. The groma keeps everything aligned, but the work feels endless, like drawing a line across the world one thorn bush at a time. Sweat trickles down your spine, even though the morning is cool. You try to joke with the man beside you, saying, if Rome wanted straight lines so badly, maybe they should have just built roads in Egypt. Flat as papyrus out there. He snorts but doesn't laugh. The centurion's glare has killed humor faster than bad wine. By midday, the route across the plain is visible. A scar of cleared grass and trampled earth. It's hard not to feel a strange pride. For all your grumbling, there's something powerful in watching order imposed on chaos. Rome's obsession with straightness feels almost obsessive-compulsive, but you admit it's impressive. During a brief rest, a debate bubbles among the crew. Was this road ordered because merchants clamored for a faster path to move goods? or because the governor worried about local unrest and wanted legions ready to march at a moment's notice. Historians still argue whether the empire prioritized trade or military control in road placement. You don't have the luxury of theory, you just know you're the one sweating to make it happen. Still, the question lingers like the smoke from your campfire. Is this really for profit or for power? Afternoon brings more precise measurements. The surveyors bring out chorobates, long wooden beams with water channels carved in them to ensure perfect leveling. You're the unlucky soul ordered to hold one end steady while another man squints through his sight. The sun beats on your neck, mosquitoes buzz in your ears, and the sweat dripping down your nose almost blinds you. You shift a little to ease your aching knees, and instantly someone barks, "Don't move!" Suddenly you're frozen, praying your legs don't give out while the Empire's next masterpiece gets aligned. When at last you're allowed to drop the beam, your arms feel like wet clay. You flop to the ground, staring at the sky, and wonder if the gods ever considered just inventing teleportation to spare you all this agony. As dusk paints the plain in pink and gold, the line is complete. Tomorrow, picks and shovels will bite into the earth, carving the trench that will swallow stones and rubble. For tonight, you shuffle back to camp. Dinner is little different from breakfast, though rumor spreads of a mule carcass being roasted somewhere down the line, illegal but delicious if true. A fiddler plays again, and one joker insists that when this road is finished, he'll walk straight home and never come back. You all laugh because the alternative is crying. Before sleep, you glance at the stakes planted in their ruler-straight path across the field. They look fragile now, but you know in a few months this line will harden into stone, a permanent scar of empire. You close your eyes, imagining footsteps marching over it for centuries to come. But for now, it's only you, aching and filthy, drifting into uneasy dreams under the Roman sky. The next dawn smells faintly of damp earth and smoke, and you know what's coming. Quarry duty. You would almost prefer digging ditches all day, but today the foreman points at you and a handful of others. You're headed toward the cliffs where Rome's appetite for stone gnaws chunks out of the earth. Congratulations, you've just been promoted to human dynamite without the dynamite. The trek is long. Your sandals slap against hard soil, and each step feels like dragging weights tied to your ankles. By the time you reach the quarry, the sun has fully risen and the air already bakes with a dry heat that promises blisters before noon. The quarry face looms ahead, jagged, gray, and scarred from years of extraction. To your tired eyes, it almost looks alive, like some wounded beast with ribs poking out of the dirt. There's no avoiding it. Picks, chisels, and hammers are handed out, each one heavier than the last. You grip yours, already aware your shoulders are going to file a formal complaint by evening. The work begins with rhythmic pounding, metal on stone, dull thuds echoing off the walls. Chips of rock sting your cheeks, and the dust coats your tongue like chalk. You cough, spit gray, and keep swinging. Here's a historical fact worth keeping in mind. The Romans didn't just rely on brute strength. They were clever. Workers sometimes cut deep parallel grooves into the rock, hammered in wooden wedges, then soaked the wedges with water. As the wood swelled, the rock split apart. It's smart engineering. But for you, it means hauling soaked timbers, hammering endlessly, and waiting under the sun while the stone creaks and groans like a dying giant. In the middle of this brutal rhythm, you hear a mutter from one of the men. Don't anger the quarry spirits. You glance sideways. He ties a small charm, bones strung with cord, onto his belt. Supposedly, quarries were haunted by restless shades of the earth. Disturb them, and a boulder might come crashing down on your head. You'd laugh, but the thought isn't entirely ridiculous when the ground itself is rumbling beneath your feet. Some whisper about offerings buried in the rubble. Coins, bits of food, even drops of blood. Fringe or not, the superstition clings to the air, heavy as the dust you're breathing. As midday heat sears your back, the foreman orders the first block freed. A cheer goes up when the wedge-pounded rock finally cracks loose with a sound like thunder. The slab topples onto the ground, and the shockwave rattles your bones. Now comes the fun part, dragging the monster onto sledges. With ropes digging into your palms, you and 20 others heave and grunt, sliding it inch by inch toward the ramp. Every muscle screams, and the rope fibers bite until you swear your hands are permanently crosshatched. Someone jokes that Rome must secretly be building roads to train strong men for circus shows. The laugh is weak, but it breaks the monotony. By late afternoon, your body feels like it's collapsing inward. Stone dust clogs your nose, your tunic is soaked through, and your stomach is growling like a chained dog. A mule brays nearby, impatient as the rest of you. You pat its flank, whispering that you're both victims of Rome's endless hunger for stone. While you gnaw stale bread at break, a debate sparks among the men. Who actually controls these quarries? Some argue they're centrally managed, vital to the empire's infrastructure. Others insist local governors skim profits, selling the best stone to private builders while conscripts like you get the scraps. Historians still argue whether quarries were tightly regulated by Rome or left to provincial chaos. All you know is that no senator is here sweating beside you. Back to work. The final task is cutting rough blocks into more manageable pieces. Saws screech, chisels spark, and the air becomes a symphony of misery. Your back aches with every downward motion, and you can't shake the sense that each strike is shaving years off your life. The quarry wall looms above, and you imagine it tumbling down in one avalanche. For a fleeting moment, you consider that the spirits might not be superstition after all. At sunset, the wagons are finally loaded. You slump against one, too tired to stand. The stone you freed today will eventually be part of the road foundation. Buried, unseen, trampled by countless feet and hooves. Your pain will vanish beneath centuries of dust, but the road will endure. There's something both tragic and oddly comforting in that. The trudge back to camp is silent, except for the creak of wagon wheels and the groans of men who no longer have jokes left. In the firelight, someone strums a lyre, plucking out a tune that sounds like homesickness made audible. You close your eyes, head tilted back, and wonder if the gods keep tally of each drop of sweat. If they do, you've already paid a heavy toll. Sleep comes quickly, though not gently. You dream of stone walls closing in, wedges splitting under pressure, and ghostly voices whispering from the quarry face. When you jolt awake at dawn, dust still lingers on your tongue, and your muscles refuse to believe you're expected to do it all again. The morning begins with a trumpet call that could wake the dead, though judging by the groans around you, most of the camp wishes it wouldn't. Today isn't quarry duty, thank the gods, but it's no holiday either. You're assigned to oversee the mixed labor crew. Legionaries, slaves, and a few unlucky contractors who thought road work was an easy paycheck. Spoiler, it isn't. The road site already buzzes with activity. Legionaries stand in neat lines, shovels in hand, as disciplined as if they were on parade. Their armor might be stacked nearby instead of strapped on, but the rhythm of their work is unmistakably military. Dig, toss, step, repeat. You almost admire it, except for the fact that you're right beside them, expected to keep pace, and your body isn't built like a soldier's. Then there are the slaves. Shackled in groups, guarded by men with whips, they slog through mud with hollow eyes. Some are prisoners of war dragged from distant provinces. Others are criminals condemned to hard labor. Their hands are raw, their backs scarred, and their silence is heavy enough to feel like another layer of stone pressing down on the road. You can't help thinking, if you drop dead tomorrow, at least you won't be chained to the task in death. Here's a hard fact. Legionaries often doubled as engineers and builders. Road construction wasn't left entirely to slaves or locals. Soldiers laid miles of paving between campaigns, partly to keep them busy and disciplined. But free citizens and contractors joined too, sometimes working under legal obligation called munera. Basically, Rome's version of voluntary community service where refusal wasn't really an option. Amid the clang of tools, you hear something unexpected. Singing. A group of slaves chants in a language you don't understand, their voices rising and falling with the rhythm of their picks. It's not cheerful, exactly, but it's oddly steadying, like the heartbeat of the work itself. Later, one of the legionaries mutters that such songs are dangerous, a way for captives to keep their spirits alive. Still, by the next hour, even some of the Roman recruits hum along, off-key but oddly unified. You shovel beside a legionary from Gaul, sweat running down both your faces. He cracks a joke that Rome should pave roads with cheese. It'd be softer on the feet, and everyone would walk faster to get a taste. You laugh, mostly because laughter makes your back hurt a little less. Even the centurion smirks before barking at the crew to double the pace. The division between groups is sharp. Soldiers get better rations and actual rest breaks. Contractors complain about late payment, though quietly, since grumbling too loudly risks a beating. Slaves don't complain at all. The whip speaks for them. You feel the unfairness press on you as much as the shovel handle. But you also feel the urgency. If you slack, the entire line suffers, and Rome doesn't tolerate bottlenecks. Midday heat burns your skin, and the dust from cut stone mixes with sweat until you feel plastered into your tunic. Bread and pasca again for lunch, though one contractor swears he spotted a roadside tavern selling figs just a mile away. It sparks a fantasy. Slipping away for fruit and a cool drink, maybe never coming back. But the fantasy shatters when you hear the crack of a whip. One of the slaves collapsed, face first in the dirt. He's dragged aside, barely conscious, while the overseer shouts for another body to fill his place. Work never pauses. Rome's roads don't care about your lungs or legs. Here's where modern scholars keep debating. How much of this grueling labor truly fell on slaves versus free citizens? Some argue that slaves bore the brunt. Others point to records of legionaries spending months building roads between campaigns. Historians still argue whether the balance leaned more toward military efficiency or forced labor economics. From your perspective, it doesn't matter. You're standing shoulder to shoulder with soldiers and shackled men alike, and the ground doesn't distinguish between your sweat and theirs. By late afternoon, the work site looks like a patchwork of exhaustion. Dusty soldiers, bent-backed slaves, contractors with blistered palms. Everyone trudges in the same rut. Yet there's a strange solidarity too. A legionary tosses half his bread crust to a slave. A contractor shields another man from the overseer's eye so he can catch his breath. Small kindnesses flicker in the cracks of Rome's iron machinery, even if the system itself grinds mercilessly forward. The sun sinks, painting the sky red, and finally the order comes to halt. Tools clatter to the ground like bones after a feast. You stagger back to camp, half dead, but something lingers in your chest. You've seen how Rome builds not just roads but hierarchies, layered like the stones themselves. Legionaries on top, contractors in the middle, slaves at the bottom. And yet, for a few hours each day, all of you are just bodies under the same sun, pushing the same stones. In the firelight, someone begins humming that work song again. Others join, quietly at first, then stronger. The tune drifts across the camp like smoke, carrying both despair and defiance. You close your eyes, letting the rhythm lull you. Tomorrow the hierarchy will bite again, but tonight, just for a moment, you're all simply road builders, equal in your exhaustion, equal in your ache, equal in the strange legacy you're hammering into the earth. The morning air is crisp, though crisp doesn't mean refreshing when it cuts through your tunic like a damp blade. Today, the foreman barks about tools and techniques because apparently hauling stones isn't enough. You're also expected to become an engineer. You shuffle toward the supply tent, where shovels, picks, chisels, and hammers lie in a heap that looks more like a junkyard than the cutting edge of Roman innovation. You grab a shovel, its wooden handle polished smooth by countless desperate hands before yours. The sturdy but heavy, the kind of weight that laughs at your sore shoulders. Nearby, a soldier demonstrates the proper way to swing a pick without shattering your own kneecap. The movement looks easy until you try it, and the vibration rattles your teeth like you've bitten a lyre string too hard. Here's the backbone fact. Roman road construction followed a layered technique called via strata. First came the deep trench, filled with statumen, large stones to anchor the road. On top of that, smaller gravel called rudis, then an even finer layer of crushed stones known as nucleus. Finally, massive paving slabs formed the surface, fitted so tightly you could almost hear the stones sigh in relief. This wasn't a quick fix. It was designed to outlast generations. Some of those roads still exist today, mocking modern potholes that open up after one winter. You're assigned to tamping duty, packing down each layer with a heavy wooden rammer. The thing looks innocent enough, but after a dozen strikes your arms scream like you've been wrestling amphory full of lead. A fellow worker jokes that tamping is just Rome's way of training your biceps for gladiator editions. You laugh. But honestly, at this rate, you'd rather face a lion than another hour of pounding gravel. Among the tools, the groma appears again. The surveyors strut about, aligning their plumb lines to make sure your road doesn't drift. You start to resent that smug little cross on a stick. One gust of wind and the plumb lines sway, throwing everything off, yet somehow the surveyors blame you, not the weather. You mutter under your breath that if Rome is conquered someday, it'll be because a groma tipped sideways. Quirky tidbit time. Some crews actually performed little rituals to cleanse their tools at the start of a project. One story claims workers washed hammers in wine before the first strike, hoping for divine favor, or maybe just hoping to steal a sip while pretending to be pious. You imagine yourself lifting your shovel and saying, "Here's to Jupiter, patron of blisters," and the thought almost makes you smile through the ache. The rhythm of the work takes over. Dig, lay, tamp, test. Dust rises in little clouds, and sweat drips from your chin to mingle with the gravel. The sun arcs higher, and your tunic sticks to your back like wet parchment. You pause only when the centurion shouts, and even then it's more to prevent collapse than to rest. Midday brings bread and salted pork, eaten with dusty fingers. You sit on a half-laid slab, chewing slowly while staring at the line of road stretching forward. It's not much yet, just a stony scar, but you can already imagine carts rolling over it, hoofs clattering, merchants haggling, armies marching. It's strange to think that your misery today will someday be someone else's convenience. The conversation at lunch drifts toward method. One soldier swears Roman roads were perfectly uniform everywhere, down to the same stone sizes. Another insists each province cut corners, adjusting for local terrain. Historians still argue whether Roman technique was standardized across the empire or more of a rough guideline. You just shrug. Standard or not, your blisters don't care. Afternoon brings paving duty, the final step of today's torture. Slabs of stone, so heavy you wonder if Jupiter dropped them from Olympus, must be fitted with almost surgical precision. You and a team of 6 wrestle one into place, sweat dripping onto its surface until it gleams. The foreman crouches, checking the joints with maddening exactness. If even a sliver of space remains, you're ordered to lift it again, adjust, and reset. You groan, praying no cart driver in the future ever curses the wobble you left behind. As the day winds down, the road begins to resemble something real. A smooth stretch, shimmering faintly in the low sun, points toward the horizon. Your body aches, but your chest swells with something like pride. Rome demands perfection, and against all odds, you've inched closer to it. Back in camp, you collapse onto your straw mat, arms trembling, palms raw. Someone nearby mutters that they'd rather be a gladiator than a road builder. Another says gladiators at least get cheered for their suffering. You chuckle, then roll onto your side, staring at the stars. You wonder if anyone, centuries from now, will walk this road and think of you. Not your name, which no one will remember, but the sweat and stone you left behind. Probably not. Still, the thought drifts with you into sleep, where dreams of endless straight lines and rattling tools lull you under. The dawn sky hangs low with heavy clouds, the kind that whisper promises of misery. You wake to the earthy scent of damp soil and already know today won't be about cutting stone or tamping gravel. No, today will be about wrestling with Rome's greatest enemy after barbarians and bureaucracy. The weather. The foreman barks the order, ditch digging. Not glamorous, but essential. Every Roman road needed drainage, otherwise the first good rain would turn it into a swampy slip and slide. You grab your shovel, its handle still rough against your blisters, and march to the half-finished stretch of road. The ground squelches under your sandals, mud sucking at your soles with every step like a needy pet you can't shake. You jab the shovel into the soil, trying to carve out a proper ditch along the road's edge. The work is grueling in a different way than stone cutting. Instead of dust choking your lungs, cold muck oozes between your toes. You mutter that Rome may conquer the world, but it will never conquer soggy socks. Here's a fact. Roman engineers designed roads with a camber, a gentle curve so water slid off into side ditches. Those ditches ran parallel, carrying runoff away to keep the road dry and firm. It was simple, brilliant, and vital. Without it, centuries of marching feet and cart wheels would have turned roads into bogs. Still, no design can save you from the sheer annoyance of moving mud. Every shovelful seems to weigh twice as much as stone, and with each dump you swear the ditch just fills itself back in. A legionary beside you cracks a joke. At least when the barbarians attack, we'll already have trenches ready. You laugh weakly, knowing the truth. If the barbarians come now, you'd probably slip in the mud before even raising a weapon. Quirky tidbit. In some provinces, workers actually offered little tokens to the mud before digging, hoping to appease whatever spirits made the ground so stubborn. A scrap of bread, a splash of wine, even a shiny pebble. You catch one of the Gauls doing it today, he flicks a coin into the ditch before scooping muck. He swears it makes the soil lighter. You try it with a crumb of bread. Spoiler, it doesn't work. But for a moment, believing almost eases the strain. Rain begins mid-morning, a steady drizzle that turns the sight into chaos. Slaves slip, contractors curse, soldiers grimace as their neat formations dissolve into a sloppy mess. Tools vanish into puddles, wagons sink to their axles, and you begin to wonder if Rome's straight roads are just elaborate aqueducts disguised as highways. The centurion bellows, but even he can't command the weather. During lunch, bread again, soggy this time, you huddle under a canvas flap with 3 others. The talk turns to maintenance. One man swears roads had to be redug every year to keep ditches clear. Another insists local towns handled upkeep, not the legions. Historians still argue how frequently maintenance was done and who bore the burden. You don't care. You're too busy wringing rainwater out of your tunic like a laundress on punishment duty. By afternoon, the rain eases, leaving behind a battlefield of mud. You're reassigned to spreading gravel, meant to stabilize the ground. You dump basket after basket into puddles, watching the stones vanish like sacrifices to Neptune. Feels pointless, yet slowly the surface firms. Rome's genius isn't in conquering mud in one blow. It's in relentless layering patience forged from sheer stubbornness. The sky darkens again before dusk, thunder rolling in the distance. You trudge back to camp, sandals squishing, tunic plastered to your skin. The fire smokes, refusing to catch properly, and dinner tastes like soggy ash. Still, someone finds humor. A contractor holds up his waterlogged bread and declares, "Behold Roman soup, just add thunder." Even the centurion chuckles, though he hides it behind a cough. That night, lying on damp straw, you shiver beneath a thin blanket. The rain drums against the canvas, steady as a heartbeat. You realize roads aren't just stone and sweat. They're endless battles with nature itself. And nature, unlike barbarians, never truly surrenders. You close your eyes, half praying the ditches you dug today hold, half dreaming that tomorrow dawns with sun. Either way, you'll be back out there, shovel in hand, cursing mud in every language Rome ever conquered. The rain has finally broken, leaving behind air so clean it almost feels suspicious. You stretch stiff limbs, grateful for dry straw under your back, though your shoulders still ache like they're plotting mutiny. The foreman bellows, and today the orders aren't about mud or gravel, they're about water of a different sort. You're headed to the river. Time to build a bridge. The path winds downhill, carts creaking under loads of stone. You shuffle along, half curious, half dreading. The river comes into view, a broad silver ribbon, rushing faster than your tired legs want to move. To cross it without a bridge would mean swimming with full gear, which, considering your lack of Olympic training, sounds like a short-lived adventure. The Romans, of course, don't tolerate bottlenecks. Where the empire goes, bridges follow. Here's your solid fact. Roman bridges often used pili, stone piers driven into riverbeds, to support arches. Engineers laid foundations underwater using cofferdams, temporary wooden enclosures pumped dry so they could build on solid ground. On top, arches locked into place with a keystone, the critical wedge-shaped stone at the very center. Without it, the bridge collapses, With it, the structure can last centuries. Some Roman bridges are still standing, which is more than can be said for your back right now. Work begins with hauling timber. You grip a log with 3 others, staggering toward the water. It's heavier than a bad mood and twice as unwelcome. The log slips in the mud, crashing onto your foot, and you yelp loud enough to draw laughter from a passing soldier. He suggests maybe you should stick to pebble duty. You grumble something unrepeatable and limp onward. The engineers direct the placement of cofferdams. Massive wooden boxes hammered into the riverbed. The sound of rams thudding against posts echoes over the valley, like some giant's drum. Water is bailed out by hand, bucket after bucket, until the river reluctantly surrenders a patch of exposed earth. You stare at it, wondering how many buckets of sweat it'll take to build this bridge. A quirky superstition surfaces as the first pier rises. One of the overseers mutters about placing charms inside the foundations, coins, amulets, even tiny figurines, to protect the bridge. Someone swears he once heard of a rooster buried alive under a bridge to keep it standing. You laugh nervously, not entirely convinced you won't hear crowing from beneath the stones tonight. Rome is practical, but never immune to superstition's sticky fingers. Hauling stones begins. These blocks are enormous, cut from the same quarry face you cursed days ago. Ropes bite into your palms as you drag them onto barges, float them across, then wrestle them into place. The engineers bark for precision. Each stone must fit tightly, mortar filling the gaps. Your muscles scream, but the moment the first arch rises, there's a hush. Even among the groaning workers, awe seeps through. The curve of stone seems impossible, like the river has been tricked into holding its breath. Midday meal comes by the riverside, bread, pork, and that eternal vinegar water. You sit on a half-built pier, legs dangling, watching sunlight scatter across the current. Talk drifts toward money. Who pays for this colossal undertaking? Some claim the emperor himself. Others argue the provincial governor squeezes taxes from locals. Historians still argue whether Rome's great bridges were centrally funded prestige projects or provincial responsibilities hidden under imperial propaganda. You just know your pay, if it ever arrives, is a pittance. The afternoon stretches into a blur of ropes, pulleys, and aching shoulders. A legionary beside you grins, saying at least the bridge will let future soldiers march without getting their sandals wet. You mutter that if Rome really cared, they'd build roads with shade roofs. He chuckles, admitting that's one innovation Rome never managed. By dusk, the skeleton of the bridge spans partway across the river. The arches catch the fading light, glowing gold against the dark water. You slump against a stone block, sweat cooling into chill. Exhaustion mixes with pride. You're helping craft something that might outlast empires, perhaps even outlast Rome itself. Back in camp, stories ripple through the tents. Someone swears they saw an engineer whispering to the keystone before placing it. Another claims a ghostly figure walked the bridge at twilight, testing its strength. You're too tired to care whether it's spirits or stress-induced hallucinations. You roll onto your mat, close your eyes, and dream of arches rising endlessly across rivers, carrying Rome forward one stone at a time. Morning mist curls over the worksite, softening edges, but nothing can soften the groans that ripple through the camp as orders arrive. Today isn't about roads or bridges. It's about cities. Your march toward a bustling settlement, carts rattling ahead with stone, timber, and lime. Roads might connect the empire, but towns are where Rome flexes its marble-clad muscles. And guess who gets to help make it happen? That's right, you're already broken back. You trudge past the gates, wide-eyed despite yourself. The city smells of bread ovens, livestock, and something less charming near the drains. You've spent weeks ankle-deep in mud and gravel, so paved streets feel like walking on luxury. Your sandals slap against smooth stone, and for a moment you imagine yourself a senator, until a cart nearly runs you down and the driver screams insults about your ancestry. Here's a fact. Roman towns followed a grid, cardo running north-south, decumanus east-west. Where they crossed, the forum sprawled. A square for markets, politics, and gossip. You're herded straight toward the forum's edge, where half-built structures rise like skeletal teeth. The contractors waste no time. You're hauling brick, mixing mortar, and stacking stone faster than you can curse. Your shoulders scream as you carry bricks in a leather sling. The overseer insists on opus cementitium, Roman concrete, mixed from lime, volcanic ash, and rubble. It's sticky, heavy, and burns your skin if it splashes. You mutter that concrete is less building material and more weaponized misery. The foreman ignores you, shouting to keep the mix wet. The sun climbs, and you find yourself assigned to the bathhouse construction. That's right, the one place in Rome designed for relaxation, and you're stuck building it instead of soaking inside. Steam chambers, heated floors, elegant mosaics, you lay stone that other people will lounge upon. You joke to a fellow worker that maybe you'll sneak in once it's finished. He smirks, saying, "If you survive that long, not the pep talk you needed." Quirky tidbit. Some towns installed lead pipes for plumbing, not realizing the health risks. Workers whispered that strange illnesses followed those pipes, but the elites loved the convenience. You eye the dull gray conduits being laid beneath the floor and wonder if luxury always comes with poison hidden inside. By midday, you're hauling timber for the amphitheater. The skeleton of seating rises in concentric arcs, already promising laughter, cheers, and maybe the occasional lion snack. As you hammer beams, the crowd of townsfolk grows. Children gawk, vendors shout, and an old man swears this theater will rival Rome's itself. You mutter under your breath that you'd settle for a bench without splinters. Lunch is bread and figs, eaten on the half-finished steps. The talk circles taxes. One man insists towns paid dearly for their monuments, squeezed by local magistrates. Another argues wealthy patrons donated out of pride. Historians still argue whether Roman urbanism was civic generosity or political flexing. You just know your wage pouch stays light regardless. Afternoon drags, and you're assigned to paving streets. Gravel base, stone slabs on top, joints packed tight. The clang of hammers rings like endless bells. Sweat blinds you, dust chokes you, and still the overseer demands straighter lines. A legionary strolls past, sandals tapping proudly, and remarks how fine the work looks. You resist the urge to trip him with your hammer. By evening, the forum's edges glow golden in the setting sun. Statues gleam, columns rise. The bathhouse roof begins to take shape. You slump in the shadow of a half-finished basilica, muscles twitching. For a moment, you allow yourself to marvel. These cities aren't just collections of buildings. They're Rome's promise carved into stone. Roads connect, cities impress. Together, they bind the empire tighter than chains. Back in camp, you collapse onto straw, eyelids heavy. The murmur of city life drifts across the walls. Vendors packing up, children laughing. A musician's reed pipe echoing faintly. You wonder if you'll ever get to enjoy the spaces you build, or if your fate is to always be outside looking in. Either way, the city will stand, long after your calloused hands are dust. The sun rises hotter than usual, a red disk glaring down like an overseer with divine authority. You wipe your brow before you've even picked up a tool. Today's orders? Not the forum, not the bathhouse. Today you're heading out along the new highway to work on milestones and the dreaded road stations. In other words, all the glamorous bits of travel that no one thanks you for. You march down the nearly finished stretch, gravel crunching beneath your sandals. The air shimmers, heat rising off stone like it's cooking you alive. You pass the surveyors, their groma still planted in the earth, fine-tuning angles. They don't lift heavy loads, but they get to wave their rods like wizards controlling the very lines of Rome. You roll your eyes and keep trudging. Here's your firm fact. Roman roads were marked by miliaria milestones, tall cylindrical stones set at regular intervals. Each carried inscriptions noting the distance to the nearest town or Rome itself, sometimes boasting which emperor funded it. They were ancient billboards, part information, part imperial flex. You run your hand over one fresh-cut milestone, the chisel marks still sharp, and think, it's basically the world's heaviest street sign. Hauling it into place is a nightmare. The stone weighs more than a donkey, and your team struggles with ropes and levers, shouting and cursing. The sun beats down, and your tunic sticks like glue. At one point, the milestone slips, nearly crushing a man's foot. He screams so loud a soldier jokes the sound could scare off bandits. Everyone laughs nervously, except the guy with the bruised toes. Quirky tidbit. Some milestones included little shrines or offerings to road gods. Travelers would stop, leave coins or food, and pray for safe journeys. You watch a local drop a fig at the base of the fresh stone and whisper a prayer. You consider adding your own, maybe for shorter workdays or sandals that don't chew your feet raw. After milestones, you're marched to the construction of a mancio, a way station for officials and couriers. Imagine an inn, a stable, and a post office mashed together. That's your project. The foundations are dug, walls rising with stone and timber. Inside, rooms are framed for travelers, while stables stretch out for weary horses. You mutter that if Rome really wanted to impress, they'd add hot baths to every station. Lunchtime is bread dipped in oil, eaten under the partial shade of an unfinished roof. Talk turns to who actually uses these stations. Some argue they're for imperial messengers and governors only, while others insist merchants slip bribes to sleep there. Historians still argue how exclusive the mansions really were, official comfort or semi-public motels. You just know that after hauling timber all morning, you wouldn't mind a bed inside one. Afternoon brings road maintenance, the least glorious task. You shovel gravel into potholes, tamp it down, smooth ruts. The sun is merciless, and sweat stings your eyes. A legionary rides by, shouting thanks for keeping the road smooth under his horse's hooves. You wave weakly, muttering that he owes you sandals and a cold drink. By dusk, milestones gleam pale in the fading light, and the way station's walls stand tall. The road stretches ahead, straight as an arrow, vanishing into the horizon. You slump at the edge, back pressed against a stone. Pride and exhaustion wrestle inside you. These milestones and stations aren't just details. They're proof Rome cared about every mile, every step, every journey. Back in camp, the talk is light. Someone jokes that future travelers will curse the milestones, each one reminding them how far they still have left to walk. You laugh until your ribs ache, knowing it's true. You roll onto your mat, eyelids drooping, and dream of endless roads lined with stone markers, each one carved with emperors' names but built on your sweat. The morning breaks with the clang of metal, sharper than the rooster calls echoing from a distant village. You blink awake to see legionaries already tightening their belts and polishing their armor. Today, the road project isn't just about paving or milestones. It's about guarding the empire's arteries. Because what good is a road if every bandit in Gaul treats it like their personal hunting ground? You shoulder your tools, but instead of stone hauling, you're handed a spear. The centurion explains that half the day will be spent fortifying this section. Ditches, watchtowers, maybe even a palisade. Rome doesn't gamble with its supply lines. You trudge to the site, muttering that you signed up for roadwork, not military cosplay. Still, with bandits lurking, maybe a spear isn't the worst accessory. Here's your solid fact. Roman roads doubled as military highways. They allowed legions to march 20 miles a day, sometimes more, and reach trouble spots quickly. Forts, outposts, and signal towers were scattered along routes for surveillance and defense. You dig into the soil, cutting a trench beside the road. It feels like déjà vu. Mud again, though this time it's a barrier, not drainage. The sun beats down as you shovel. Sweat pours, and every clump of dirt feels heavier than stone. A legionary jokes that if barbarians attack, they'll probably trip into the ditch and break their ankles before reaching you. You smirk, secretly hoping he's right. Quirky tidbit. Some forts posted messages carved into stone, warning travelers about thieves. They were the ancient equivalent of "beware of pickpocket" signs in subway stations. You imagine a bandit reading one, shrugging, and robbing someone anyway. Not exactly deterrence. After trenches, you're assigned to hauling timber for a small watchtower. Logs slam into place with a thud, ropes creak, hammers echo. Slowly, the skeleton rises. You help wedge planks, imagining the view from above, an endless road snaking across farmland and forest. But no, you don't get to climb it. The soldiers do, puffing their chests while you stand below, wiping grime from your face. Midday meal is bread and cheese under the tower's half-finished shade. Talk circles around dangers. One man swears he heard wolves stalk caravans last winter, dragging off a mule. Another claims bandits disguise themselves as merchants, striking when least expected. Historians still argue how frequent road crime truly was. Daily menace or occasional nuisance. You just know the ditch won't stop wolves, and your spear feels more like a stick than a weapon. The afternoon brings a patrol, not optional. You're marched down the road with a squad, eyes scanning the trees. Every rustle of leaves feels like a lurking thief. Every bird call a signal. Hours pass, sandals grinding against gravel, until finally you loop back, sweat-soaked and tense. The road is quiet today, but your imagination isn't. By dusk, the tower stands firm, the ditch stretches wide, and soldiers pace with practiced vigilance. You slump on a stone, spear across your lap, back aching in new places. These roads aren't just veins of commerce. They're battle lines, every mile guarded by sweat, wood, and wary eyes. Back in camp, the talk is weary but relieved. No raids today, no ambushes, just aching muscles. Someone jokes that Rome's roads are so well guarded. Even the bandits get lost trying to find them. You chuckle, but the laugh dies as you wonder what tomorrow brings. Another tower? Another patrol? Or maybe a bandit bold enough to test your spear? Either way, Rome expects you on duty, road builder and reluctant sentry rolled into one. The morning air feels heavy, as if it already knows what's coming. The camp stirs nervously, not because of rain, not because of another ditch, but because word has spread. A barbarian raid has been spotted nearby. The road, still half-finished, suddenly shifts from being a proud monument of empire to a glaring invitation for attack. You clutch your tools, wishing you had armor instead of a shovel. Orders arrive fast. Today's work is no longer about leveling gravel or raising milestones. It's about defense. Soldiers bark commands, and you're herded into lines, half laborer, half auxiliary. Shields are scarce, so some of you carry planks, hoping they'll deflect more than splinters. Your stomach knots tighter than rope around a stone block. Here's your solid fact. Roman roads weren't just infrastructure. They were tactical lifelines. Armies relied on them to outmaneuver tribes, while tribes sometimes tried to sabotage or ambush along them. Some historians note roads through hostile territory doubled as statements of dominance, an empire daring its enemies to strike. You, unfortunately, are the unlucky punctuation mark in that sentence. The foreman directs you to pile stones along the roadside, makeshift barriers against cavalry. Sweat beads as you heave the rocks into crude walls. The soldiers chuckle, muttering that barbarians won't even notice such piles. You wonder if they're right. Your wall looks more like a drunk mason's dream than a fortress. Quirky tidbit. Some Roman superstitions claimed scattering nails across roads would ward off raiders, since they were thought to curse whoever stepped on them. You glance at your battered sandals, thinking nails would curse you first. Still, one of the locals tosses a handful down, muttering charms. You hope the raiders are barefoot. Midday arrives, and with it, tension. Scouts return, reporting smoke on the horizon. You chew stale bread that tastes like chalk, stomach too tight for hunger. Talk buzzes. Some say the raiders will hit tonight. Others insist they'll avoid the road entirely. Historians still argue how much direct damage barbarians really caused to infrastructure versus the empire exaggerating for propaganda. But right now, smoke looks real enough. Afternoon drills keep you busy. You're marched in circles, spears wobbling, soldiers shouting. You stumble, nearly skewering a comrade, and the centurion smacks your helmet with the flat of his sword. "Hold steady, road builder," he growls. Easy for him to say he's got armor, you've got a splintery shaft and shaky legs. By dusk, the smoke drifts closer. The camp tightens, fires douse to embers. Shadows lengthen across the unfinished road, turning milestones into eerie silhouettes. Every snapping twig beyond the ditch makes you jump. When the attack doesn't come, relief mixes with dread. Tomorrow might be worse. You collapse onto your straw mat, nerves humming louder than the cicadas. Your hands still ache from hauling stone, but it's fear that keeps you awake. These roads are lifelines, yes, but lifelines run both ways. For Rome, they bring trade and order. For raiders, they're a map straight to you. As your eyelids finally droop, you think, maybe building in mud wasn't the worst fate. At least mud didn't swing axes. Dawn comes with no raid, only a heavy silence that weighs on your chest. The smoke on the horizon has thinned, but the threat hasn't vanished. It just lingers, like the ache in your muscles after weeks of toil. Today, though, the foreman insists you get back to actual roadwork. Rome can't stall every time danger prowls. Still, as you grab your tools, you know something different hangs in the air. The toll of years. You trudge to the worksite, body slower than before. The road stretches on, straight as always, but you notice for many, road building was a lifetime sentence, not a temporary gig. The work today is repairing ruts, stones dislodged by carts, gravel washed away by rain. You bend to lift a slab, and your back twinges sharply. You freeze, teeth clenched, praying it passes. It does, barely, leaving a dull throb that shadows every step. You joke weakly to a comrade. Maybe Rome can pave over my spine too. He chuckles, then falls quiet, realizing you're only half kidding. Quirky tidbit. Some workers swore by odd remedies for pain. Another scoffs, saying road builders rarely lived long enough to enjoy it. Historians still argue what rewards, if any, common laborers actually received compared to soldiers. You just know your hands are cracked, your knees grind like millstones, and the land you dream of is probably imaginary. Afternoon brings more lifting, more tamping, more sweat. The younger men handle it better, laughing as they race to move gravel faster. You try to keep pace but stumble, spilling half your load. The foreman glares but doesn't bark. Maybe he sees the exhaustion etched into your face. Or maybe he just knows shouting won't refill your strength. By dusk, the repaired stretch looks smooth again, a deceptive illusion of permanence. You lean on your shovel, staring at the horizon where the road disappears. How many more miles? How many more years? Back in camp, you sink onto your mat, bones creaking. Around you, laughter, dice games. A stolen tune played on a flute. You close your eyes, not from joy but from sheer necessity. The road has taken your strength, your speed, your youth. Tomorrow it will ask for more, and you'll give it because that's what Rome demands. As sleep creeps in, you wonder if the stones will remember you. Or will they simply bear the weight of others, long after your name is dust? The next dawn is hazy, as if the sky itself is weary of watching you toil. You stir awake with stiff joints, every movement accompanied by little cracks and groans. Around you, the camp is quieter than usual. Several men have simply vanished overnight, deserting into the forests. You can't even muster anger. You just wonder if they'll survive long enough to regret it. Today's orders? Not more stone hauling, not even ditches. No, today is about people. The foreman assigns you to a crew working with locals, farmers, villagers, even conscripted tribesmen. The empire doesn't build alone. It drags entire provinces into its projects. You shuffle toward the site, shoulders heavy, already dreading the clash of tongues and tempers. Here's your firm fact. Roman roads were built with local labor as much as legionary sweat. Communities were often compelled to supply workers, materials, or funds. For conquered peoples, the road was both a gift and a burden, opening trade but draining resources. You see it in the faces of the men and women lined up today, eyes wary as they're handed tools. The first challenge is language. You ask for a hammer, and the villager stares blankly. You mime the motion, and he bursts out laughing. Soon, half the crew joins in. You feel heat in your cheeks but laugh too. Better humor than hostility. Quirky tidbit. Some Roman officials hired interpreters who doubled as jokesters, deliberately twisting phrases to amuse both sides. One interpreter today tells the locals that Rome builds roads straight enough for the gods to walk, then whispers to you that he actually said, straight enough for donkeys to trip. You chuckle, nearly dropping your basket of gravel. By midday, progress is slow but steady. Locals haul wood, tamp soil, pass stones. Some work grudgingly, others with surprising pride. You notice a young villager tracing patterns into wet mortar, swirls and symbols that look nothing like Roman order. Historians still argue whether local artistry blended into roads subtly, or if strict Roman standards erased it entirely. Watching him, you suspect small rebellions survived in stone, hidden in plain sight. Lunch is shared, your bread and vinegar water swapped for their flat cakes and goat cheese. The taste surprises you, richer than your rations. Around the fire, someone jokes that Rome conquers stomachs faster than it conquers armies. For once, you laugh without bitterness. Afternoon brings arguments. A farmer refuses to haul more stone, shouting in his tongue. The foreman raises his whip, but the interpreter steps in, calming both sides. Tension simmers, then fades, replaced by grudging cooperation. You exhale, realizing how fragile this empire is. Not just stone on stone, but compromise stacked atop resentment. By dusk, a new stretch of road lies firm, the day's labor carved into earth. Locals drift back to their homes, some glancing over shoulders with mixed expressions. Fear, pride, maybe defiance. You slump on a milestone, legs trembling, watching them vanish into the fields. Back in camp, talk circles around the deserters. Some say they'll be caught and flogged. Others whisper they'll vanish into tribes, free of Rome's yoke. You roll onto your mat, staring at the canvas roof. Roads bind people together, yes, but sometimes they're chains. And you, tired builder that you are, can't decide if you're binding the world or shackling it. The morning starts with an unusual quiet, the kind that feels less like peace and more like the pause before a hammer drops. You drag yourself upright, joints creaking like wagon wheels, and notice even the foreman looks uneasy. Today isn't about building new roads or even guarding them, it's about fixing disasters. A messenger has come with orders. A section of road has collapsed, washed out by flooding. Rome's marvel has turned into a muddy scar, and it's your unlucky job to stitch it back together. The walk is long, the air heavy with damp. When you arrive, the scene steals your breath. A gaping void cuts across the road, stones scattered like children's toys, earth gouged away by rushing water. Carts can't pass, soldiers can't march. For all of Rome's pride, here lies proof that nature can still chew through empire. Here's your solid fact. Roman roads needed constant repair. Floods, frost, roots, and endless traffic battered them down. Maintenance gangs, sometimes soldiers, sometimes locals, patched holes, rebuilt embankments, and replaced washed-out stones. A road wasn't a one-time triumph. It was an ongoing struggle, century after century. You're handed a shovel and ordered to start clearing debris. The mud sucks at your sandals. The sun bakes your back, and each stone weighs twice as much when coated in slime. A legionary slips, landing flat in muck, and the entire crew erupts in laughter. Even he cracks a grin, though his dignity sinks faster than the stone he dropped. Quirky tidbit. Some engineers swore by burying bundles of brushwood beneath foundations in swampy areas, believing the tangled roots created a floating base. You watch workers weave sticks today, layering them like a giant wicker mat. Feels absurd, but when the ground firms under your step, you realize absurdity sometimes works. Midday meal is bleak. Soggy bread, washed down with even soggier water from a barrel that smells suspiciously of mold. Around you, talk grows sharp. One man swears the empire doesn't fund repairs properly. Another insists local governors pocket taxes meant for roads. Historians still argue whether Rome maintained its roads efficiently or let provinces shoulder the burden unevenly. You don't need debates. You've got mud under your fingernails and blisters blooming on your palms. The afternoon grinds on. Stones are reset, gravel hauled, embankments reinforced. The heat presses down, turning the air into a furnace. You curse under your breath, imagining Rome's senators reclining in marble villas, sipping wine while you shovel mud. At one point you mutter, "Let them repair their own roads." A comrade laughs and says, "If they did, we'd all be rich from bribes." By dusk, the gap begins to shrink. The road looks whole again, rough, uneven, but passable. Carts roll tentatively across, soldiers march with cautious steps. The foreman beams as if the gods themselves will reward him. You just sag against a milestone, too drained to care. Back in camp, fires flicker as stories spread. Someone claims a storm god cursed the road for being too straight. Another insists barbarians sabotaged it upstream. You know better. It was just rain, relentless and uncaring. Still, as you lie on your mat, exhaustion swallowing you, you wonder if the Empire's real enemy isn't men with swords, but the slow grind of nature reclaiming what you lay down. The sky feels strangely clear this morning, as if it knows something you don't. You wake slower than usual, savoring the few moments of stillness before the foreman's bark yanks you to your feet. Today's orders are simple yet heavy with finality. Finish the last stretch of road leading into the next province, then prepare for inspection. You can almost laugh after years of aching backs, split hands, and mud-caked sandals. This endless path is nearly done. You trudge along the half-completed stretch, the stones glowing faintly in the early sun. Each piece you lift feels less like a burden and more like punctuation, closing out a sentence that's taken years to write. Still, fatigue weighs on you. You joke to the man beside you, "If Rome ever builds a road to the moon, I'm retiring." He chuckles, wheezes, then says, "They'd still make us haul the gravel." Here's your concrete fact. By the height of the empire, Rome built over 250,000 miles of roads, with about 50,000 miles paved in stone. These routes stretched across continents, linking Britain to Syria, Spain to Egypt. You realize you're just one speck in this colossal web, yet without specks, no web holds. The final stones slide into place. The road glistens, straight as an arrow, stretching so far your eyes blur. Quirky tidbit. Some builders left hidden marks, little carved initials or secret symbols, etched on stones as signatures. You scratch your own mark with a nail, a crooked spiral, knowing no senator will ever notice but hoping some curious traveler centuries later might. The inspection is tense. A Roman official arrives on horseback, robes spotless, sandals polished. He barely looks at you. He taps a stick against the stones, nods at the drainage ditches, then declares the road adequate. Adequate years of sweat, blood, and broken sleep reduced to a word that tastes like lukewarm porridge. You share a glance with your comrades, and one mutters, "Adequate is better than flogged." As dusk falls, you're dismissed. Not freed, not honored, just sent off to wherever Rome needs hands next. But tonight, you sit by the fire a little straighter. You think of merchants who'll roll carts here, soldiers who'll march, messengers who'll sprint with scrolls. You think of distant centuries, when people will marvel at Roman engineering, never imagining your aching spine or the moldy rations. Historians still argue whether Roman roads truly unified the empire or simply drained its people. You can't answer. All you know is that you've left pieces of yourself embedded in these stones. Sweat, laughter, curses, even that silly spiral. The road may belong to Rome, but the struggle, the grit, the story, that's yours. And now, as the fire burns lower, your eyes grow heavy. You picture the road stretching on forever, carrying travelers you'll never meet, fading into horizons you'll never see. You lie back, the hum of crickets blending with your slowing breath, and the weight of empire finally lifts, if only for a moment. So here you are, friend, at the end of a long, winding path. The road has stretched beneath your weary feet, mile after mile, stone after stone, until the very act of walking has become its own quiet rhythm. You've felt the heat of the sun on your back, the chill of the rain soaking your clothes, the sting of blisters and the ache of muscles, and yet you carried on because that was the way of Rome and, for tonight, the way of you. Now the noise of hammers fades, the weight of baskets lifts from your shoulders, and the shouts of foremen melt into silence. Imagine the road behind you glowing softly in moonlight, each stone cooled, each rut smoothed, stretching into the dark like a silver ribbon. No one is watching now, no officials judging, no soldiers marching. Just the quiet, just the night, just the gentle hum of the earth remembering the labor that has passed across it. Breathe in, slowly, deeply, as though the air itself carries the scent of pine from the forests and the faint smoke of distant campfires. Exhale, and feel the day release its hold on you. The strain in your hands loosens, the knot in your back unravels, the tightness in your chest eases. The road still exists, yes, but tonight you do not need to build it, guard it, or fear it. Tonight, you only need to rest beside it, letting its length carry you toward dreams. So close your eyes, let your thoughts wander, and picture the road fading not into duty, but into sleep. Smooth, endless, calming, until even your imagination drifts away. Sweet dreams.